Welcome back, and let's get straight into ranking the top hit songs of 2023, politically. Base tier. This is for the songs that are based. 36, Rich Flex, Drake and 21 Savage.
21, can you do something for me? 21. Can you hit a little Rich Flex for me?
Here, Drake asks 21 to hit a Rich Flex, a play on leftist sloganeering, insinuating that 21 will go on to beat the rich, and perhaps even eat them.
Put a nigga in the chicken wing.
35, Rock in a Hard Place, Bailey Zimmerman.
Between a rock and a hard place, red wine and mistakes.
Let's do a little triangulation. We're somewhere between Iraq and a hard place. Now there are a number of hard places around the world, but let's see what tops the list. Okay, Yahoo Finance, that seems good. Many of the worst countries in the world are located in Africa, which gives credence to racists who believe that other races are inferior in intellect and hence unable to improve their situation. Okay, yeah, skip the analysis. Let's do that. Burkina Faso, Mali, Big Congo, Somalia, and at number 1, Afghanistan. Checks out. This probably puts us in Iran, but let's double check that with the other clue.
Red wine and mistakes.
We're also between red wine, clearly referring to the wine-producing powerhouses of Italy, France, and Spain, and mistakes, correspondingly referring to the Tatmadaws' 2021 military coup d'etat and consequent civil war in Myanmar. Last year, Iran was at an inflection point, with fierce anti-government protests ignited by the death of Mahsa Amini at the hands of the theocratic state's morality police for improperly wearing a hijab.
Is this where it mends or it breaks? Between a rock and a hard place.
Unfortunately, it broke, or mended, I guess, whichever is the bad one, with the Khomeini regime violently suppressing the protests and preserving its power. 34. Shirt. SZA. In March of last year, Silicon Valley Bank experienced a bank run and subsequently failed after it unwisely bought long-term treasury bonds with billions in new deposits from the pandemic tech boom. This led to the collapse of a couple other mid-sized banks and swift intervention from the FDIC to try and stop a wider failure of the banking system. Although the government's efforts were ultimately successful, preventing depositors from losing anything, the optics of what seemed to critics like a bailout was a bad look for Biden. This is despite the fact that investors were made whole not through taxpayer money, but through the Bank Term Funding Program, which helped banks to access liquidity against their assets, stabilizing a situation where the status of billions of dollars of deposits was up in the air. 33. All My Life. Lil Durk, featuring J. Cole. In a political tour de force, Durk and Cole tackled a number of issues, big and lil, esoteric and germane. Police abusing their power.
Remember when cops are rats talking out my ass, boy, you ain't shit but a bitch with a bag.
Overcoming stereotyping in a troubled past.
I decided I had to finish, but the media called me a menace. I just sat with the men politicians, I'm trying to change the image.
Trouble accessing firearms for people with a criminal history.
I know a felon who trying to get forward.
Lack of resources during youth, and the associated interactions with the carceral system.
Child support, your only support. For a visit, I'm going through courts. Went to jail, they was chaining me up.
The importance of pandemic programs.
See how you gon' joke about stimulus, but they really had came in the clutch.
Great stuff so far, and then we get to the chorus.
All my life.
Look, I get the point they're trying to make about the early onset of systemic injustices, but just from an arithmetic point of view, I'm not sure if these are the right people to make it. All their life really isn't all that long. 32. Going, Going, Gone. Luke Combs. In Going, Going, Gone, Luke Combs points out some of the many things that have been commercialized in our society. Public transit,
Like a runaway southbound train.
scarce water resources,
Like an Arizona desert rain.
natural phenomena,
Like a lightning in the sky.
patriotism,
like fireworks in July.
Entertainment.
Like a left field home run ball.
Pharmaceuticals.
Like a whiskey shot and last call.
And, of course, women.
That girl is going, going on.
31. Spin 'Bout You. Drake and 21 Savage.
Damn, just turned on the news and seen that man who never got pussy in school and making laws about what women could do.
A crowd-pleasing, if implicatively suspect point about abortion distracts but doesn't detract from a song that's otherwise about the revolution of the sun around the earth in a G7. 30. Bad Habit. Steve Lacy.
I bite my tongue, it's a bad habit. Kinda mad that I didn't take a stab at it.
Bad Habit follows the reticence of major figures in the Democratic Party to challenge Joe Biden this primary cycle. With rising discontentment over his age, policy, age, economy, age, and age, many Democratic voters were hungry for alternatives.
I wish I knew you wanted me. I wish I knew. I wish I knew you wanted me.
Part of the problem was the absence of a clear alternative, with no potential candidate having the name recognition, broad appeal, and experience to receive media attention as the obvious replacement.
Thought you were too good for me, my dear. Never gave me time of day, my dear.
But major politicians stood back, hoping to avoid making the party look weak, and knowing that a primary challenge against a sitting president that ended any other way than victory would be career suicide.
Made a move, could've made a move. If I knew I'd be with you.
And, as the months passed, and Biden won primary after primary, it became increasingly unlikely that any serious candidate would make a play.
Is it too late to pursue?
Is it too late? This question was asked with newfound urgency after Biden faltered at his first debate performance. Still, major leaders in the party were initially reluctant to openly make any calls for Joe to stumble down, with little more than sheepish obfuscations and strategic toe-in-the-water leaks to gauge public sentiments.
Would you mind if I tried to make a pass at it?
Weeks passed, and as Biden failed to recover in the public eye, and Donald Trump successfully recovered in the public ear, Joe realized he really ought to do what was best for the country and let someone else take the reins.
Now you're not too good for me, my dear. Funny you come back to me, my dear. It's okay, things happen for reasons that I can't ignore, yeah.
29. Thinking About Me. Morgan Wallen. In stark contrast to Bad Habit, Thinking About Me covers the Republican primary, which had a lot of competition even though it wasn't particularly competitive. Republican hopefuls engaged in a series of debates, unable to ignore the elephant that wasn't in the room.
Probably tell him we're a burnt out flame. Probably tell him that I ain't been on your mind. I ain't nothing but a long gone thing. You can cuss my name, but baby, don't you lie.
Although he didn't even participate, Donald Trump dominated the debates, just as he would go on to dominate the primary.
Every time you close your eyes, tell me who do you see? When you're tasting what he's drinking, are you thinking about me?
28. Nobody Gets Me. SZA. Many wondered why former Vice President Mike Pence would throw his fly in the ring for the nomination of a party whose opinion of him ranged from general indifference to frothing at the mouth and calling for blood. Obviously, there was no world in which he wins the nomination, much less the presidency or even vice presidency. If he wasn't thinking with his head, he must have been thinking with his heart.
Took a long vacation, no makeup, just Jay-Z. We're balls deep, now we beefing.
Though their relationship was imperfect, borderline abusive, Mike saw the nomination process as the only way to get some attention from his long-gone Don, in a Hail Mary to reconnect.
How am I supposed to tell you? I don't wanna see you with anyone but me. Nobody gets me like you.
Alas, it seems like Mike has come to understand that this dream is out of reach, consigning himself to a sad, empty existence.
Only like myself when I'm with you. Nobody gets me, you do.
27. Heart Like a Truck. Lainey Wilson. The advance of technological innovation has been faster than ever, leading to massive societal shifts that we have only begun to see.
Boy, I tell you what, you better buckle up.
Laney speaks to some of the anxiety that many workers are facing. Career seekers don't just have to think about their skills and aspirations. They have to consider whether or not their occupation will even exist in a decade. Many worry that technology like AI will outperform and overwhelm human labor, which is often sloppy and irregular. But Laney has found a solution: to become one with the machine. "26. Por las noches. Peso Pluma." You're in the kitchen. It's 1 a.m. The lights are off, and your senses are heightened. Suddenly, the memories hit you like Lainey Wilson's heart.
Cuando por las noches recordaba todo, el olor de aquel perfume sobre todo.
That hint of Ethel Mercaptan in the air, the sweet scent of a now forbidden fruit.
Eres intocable como joya de oro.
All those meals you had here.
Esas piernas largas comerme yo solo.
But were you ever really alone? With those big blue eyes staring back at you?
Y tus ojos grandes me perdí en un laberinto.
How dare they take this from you?
Y pensar que tú ya no vas a estar, pasará, solito me dejará.
What now? Electric? Induction? A mockery.
Tú te vas de mi vida. Como tú no hay nadie más. No hay nadie más.
25. Daylight. David Kushner.
There's darkness in the distance from the way that I've been living, but I know I can't resist it.
In 2022, the Senate passed the Sunshine Protection Act, which would have moved the U.S. to permanent daylight savings time. Yet it stalled in the House, not because of partisan gridlock or lobbying from Big Clock, but because we could not agree on whether to set the clocks forward all year or to follow the natural order.
Running from the daylight, oh I love it and I hate it at the same time.
24. Until I Found You. Steven Sanchez.
Georgia pulled me in, I asked to love her once again.
In Until I Found You, President Joe Biden serenades Georgia, a state which was critical to his electoral success in 2020 and could not be once again in November. If you haven't noticed already, most audio political meaning, and thus most of my analysis, is lyrical, but this song actually has something going on compositionally. Here, the 1950s-esque style of this Blue-Eyed Soul tune is a reference to how old Biden is. And speaking of mortality in the Peach State, that brings us to 23. Bury Me in Georgia. Kane Brown.
But that's the place I wanna be after my last breath. Bury me in Georgia.
Here, Democratic strategist Kane Brown outlines the party's secret to their recent string of victories in Georgia. By moving elderly Democrats to the Atlanta suburbs, killing them, and then secretly sending in mail-in ballots on their behalf, the Georgian leftists have been able to tip the scales in their favor. 22. Eyes Closed. Ed Sheeran. Looking at the historic and spectacular nature of his failures, losing a hard-won speakership in a matter of months, and resigning from Congress before year's end, it can be easy to assume that no one in Congress actually liked Kevin McCarthy. But of course, there was a reason that his caucus chose him in the first place.
I pictured this year a little bit different when it hit February.
Once he won the speakership after a full 15 rounds of voting, McCarthy's amigos Tom and Guy were looking forward to finally seeing their buddy hold the reins. After rogue members of his caucus pulled the trigger on ousting him, the mood shifted. Kevin's pals, French Hill and Garrett Graves, knew that the intra-party instability would improve the Democrats' electoral prospects in 2024.
I could just pretend the colors are more than blue.
But they were also personally sad to see their homeboy leave. But no one was more affected than the speaker's bestie, Patrick.
Delusion is here again, and I think you'll come home soon.
To Representative McHenry, the house is hardly a home without Kevin, and he can't bear to see those hallowed halls without being reminded of what he lost.
I'm here alone, just dancing with my eyes closed. 'Cause everywhere I look, I still see you. And time is moving.
21. Dial Drunk, Noah Kahn featuring Post Malone. Dial Drunk tells the story of New England native Noah Kahn's run-in with the police after being arrested for drunk driving. Noah shares his strategy for surviving an encounter with law enforcement. He freely consents to a search.
I'll give you my blood alcohol.
He appeals to the officer's likely fondness for evangelical nationalism
Change my faith, I'll praise the flag.
and police worship.
Change my faith, I'll kiss the badge.
Through these efforts, he masterfully gains the trust and sympathy of the officers, who instinctively take his side when he's unsuccessfully trying to reconnect with his ex-girlfriend. Now, of course, not everyone can pull off this strategy with equal results, and not all interactions with the police end well. 20. Cuff It, Beyonce. Beyonce here tells the other side of the story, detailing the intentions of the police. To ruin the lives of others. Following their training, cops will cause serious injuries, often fatal ones, and they will take no accountability for their actions. 19. PRC, Peso Pluma and Nathaniel Cano. Now for some international music. PRC tells a story from the People's Republic of China. Here, Peso Pluma speaks from the perspective of a CCP-backed manufacturer, selling to foreign markets. The products he sells are made in dangerous conditions and with dubious materials, but he knows that the shopper's high customers feel will assuage any reservations they have. And despite occasional complaints, business is booming, with consumers buying more and more. Amidst all this, Nathaniel Cano represents the workers, seeing the economic benefits of this opportunity, but being careful not to say too much beneath the watchful eye of the CCP. 18. Meltdown, Travis Scott featuring Drake.
Man, fuck all that spinning and narrative shit. I melt down the chains that I bought from your boss. Give a fuck about all of that heritage shit.
Drake sharply calls out how lost cause narratives and their corporate backers try to excuse the obviously racist and evil motivations behind the Confederacy under the guise of heritage to construct a politically useful culture war issue. Drake also criticizes revisionists' attempts to rehabilitate the Confederacy's image,
Don't come to the boy about repairing some shit.
rewriting its legacy as a sympathetic actor in American history.
Don't come to the boy about sparing some shit.
These ideas have taken root within the modern conservative movement, leading the Florida State Board of Education to include the following in its guidelines for teaching children about slavery. Quote,
Instructions includes how slaves developed skills which, in some instances, could be applied for their personal benefit.
end quote. Travis Scott's response,
Is you fucking crazy? Is you fucking crazy?
yeah, seems about right. He continues,
And they scared of the 7.
referring to the attempts to vilify the radical abolitionist John Brown and his backers, the Secret Six.
After 1-3, then we turn up 11. Keep the shit open like 7-Eleven.
1-3, referring to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, set the U.S. on the path to turn up freedom and democracy to 11, though, like the convenience chain 7-Eleven, this remains an open issue. What are we even doing here? Is this the death of art? to tear every little thing into pieces until we find somewhere in the bloody scraps some suggestion of political meaning to latch onto like a leech, draining it till there's nothing left but the decomposing husk of what once was. Well, that's what 17, Everything I Love, Morgan Wallen, thinks.
Can't you see what you're doing, girl? You ruin damn near everything I love.
16, Last Night, Morgan Wallen. Here it is, the song of the year. What exactly does the soundtrack to 2023 say? Last Night isn't monumental. It's not anthemic. It doesn't ask us to consider grand narratives or to make historic changes. All it asks us to do is to think about last night.
Last night we let the liquor talk. I can't remember everything we said, but we said it all.
Let's try to remember what happened. Last Night released on January 31st, 2023, making Last Night the preceding Monday. Last night, millions of Americans agonized over the details of the torture and murder of Tyree Nichols at the hands of unhinged police. Last night, millions more were worried about a government shutdown caused by partisan politicians perpetually unable to compromise. Last night, prosecutors put forth evidence concerning the crimes of former President Donald Trump. Last night, dozens were killed by the Taliban in a suicide bombing in Pakistan. Last night was not a night like no other. It was a night like so many others, and so many more to come.
Well, baby, something's telling me this ain't over yet. No way it was our last night. No way it was our last night.
15. Players, Coray.
Cause girls is players too. Bitches getting money all around the world, cause girls is players too.
In Players, Coray provides a Marxist critique of global corporate feminism.
What you know about living on the top? Penthouse suites looking down on the ops?
This ideology encourages women to become a part of the oppressor class, looking down on the ops, read the proletariat, rather than joining what should be an intersectional revolution of oppressed classes and genders.
If you broke, then you gotta let him go. You could have anybody, any money, more. Cause when you a boss, you could do what you want.
Here, by using the replaceability of the worker in modern industrialized economies to ruthlessly fire her struggling employees, Coray revealed the inevitable destruction of human dignity that comes with the accumulation of capital in hierarchical structures of corporate power. 14. I Remember Everything, Zach Bryan, featuring Casey Musgraves. When I covered this song last September, alas, he is still affected.
I wish I didn't, but I do. Remember every moment.
And he'll never forget.
I remember everything.
Some of you were skeptical of my interpretation. I'll take this opportunity to spell things out for the less comprehensionally inclined amongst you.
I remind you of your daddy and his 88 Ford.
This is a reference to how George W. Bush started the Iraq War amidst post-9/11 tensions in order to complete the legacy of his daddy, George H.W. Bush, who was elected in 1988 and oversaw the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein.
Blame it on the beach, grown men don't cry.
What does the beach have? Sand. What else has a lot of sand? That's right, the Middle East. Americans, shook by national tragedy, put the blame on an entire region, race, and religion, and started several decades-long conflicts instead of taking the chance to express their feelings in a more productive way. 13. Ella Baila Sola, Eslabon Armado, and Peso Pluma. It's not often that popular music breaks out of its bubble and makes its way into the mainstream news media as a cultural phenomenon. The quintessential example of this was the explosion in popularity of United Kingdom-based acts like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Herman's Hermits during what came to be known as the British Invasion. Last year saw a similarly historic surge in popularity of regional Mexican musical acts, leading the media to dub this musical phenomenon as the Mexican Invasion.
They're just streaming across. This is a flat-out invasion.
You have a group of people that are invading the U.S. border.
That's an invasion.
It is an invasion.
This is an invasion.
is terrifying.
And I'm going to call it an invasion, like it or not.
With clear parallels to Beatlemania, the cultural dominance of bands such as Grupo Frontera or Border Group in English was sensationalized by the media, especially pop culture-centered networks like Fox News, as the Border Crisis, a catchy moniker for even catchier tunes. Former President Trump even got in on the action.
I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
Likening these groups to English rock band The Animals. Ella Baila Sola is not here just for its place as the biggest song of the invasion. It also cleverly plays on the double meaning of a quote-unquote Mexican invasion. As if there were actual concerns of a literal invasion at the border, Peso jokes that he would conquer the families of his American victims and take over the cultural and genetic heritage of this nation, as if anyone could ever think something so patently absurd. 12. Tennessee Orange, Megan Maroney.
Mama, I'm calling. I've got some news. Don't you tell Daddy, he'll blow a fuse. Don't worry, I'm doing okay.
Inspired by the 2011 blockbuster Romeo and Juliet, Tennessee Orange tells a tale of forbidden love. Megan's love is from Tennessee, and she's from Georgia. You're probably wondering why this is such a big deal. The mainstream media would have you believe that this song is about an interstate college football rivalry between the Tennessee Volunteers and the Georgia Bulldogs.
And I still want the dogs to win, but I'm wearing Tennessee orange for him.
With Tennessee Orange referring to the team's signature color, but come on, do you really buy that?
I know you raised me to know right from wrong.
Being with a Tennessean is a moral failing. This isn't about some cute rivalry, it's about right and wrong. What's really going on? Let's investigate.
I met somebody, and he's got blue eyes. He opens the door and he don't make me cry.
Let's see. Blue eyes, door, cry, blue eyes, something blue, easy, door, a little bit harder. Remember the Bulldogs earlier? This references the Packers, which brings us to Green Bay. But we already figured out the color. No worries, when one door closes, another door, peninsula. So it's something around the door peninsula. Cry, tears, water. But no, he doesn't make her cry. No cry, no tears, say it with me. No water. It's also clear now. On June 1st, 1796, Congress declared the 35th parallel to be the southern border of Tennessee. A couple decades later, when Georgia and Tennessee sent out surveyors to define the border, they made a pivotal error and placed it about a mile south of the 35th. No one really cared for a while, but as the Atlanta metro grew and its residents grew thirstier, all eyes turned to Tennessee, and, looking at the region, the Tennessee is the only significant source of legally ambiguous freshwater in northwest Georgia I see. Why? In the 1960s, the Tennessee Valley Authority constructed the Nickajack Dam, creating Lake Nickajack, extending the Tennessee River's footprint solidly below the 35th parallel. Absolutely parched and fiending for a drink, Georgia lawmakers tried several times to make a claim to some or all of the 50-odd square mile area that they were originally entitled to, each time to no avail. As the years passed, Georgians saw their desiccation turn to desperation. Tensions came to a breaking point in 2011.
So now, Georgians want to tap into Lake Nickajack, just yards over the border. To back up their claim, lawyer Brad Carver has come armed with a club, a golf club.
And with that, the first shot was fired. War has raged ever since. Orange isn't just the color of the Volunteers. It's the opposite of blue, mocking Georgia's lack of water. When Megan says, she's not referencing a jersey color. She's referring to the Georgian guerrilla forces who, following the advice of Georgia's Project Wet, decided they were getting that water one way or another. But of course, there's only one thing that can overcome regional resource conflicts. True love. 11. Kill Bill. SZA. I mean, I get it. Alright, that takes us to the end of this tier. I'll see you next time for the top 10 best hit songs of 2023. Politically. I'm going to... It's green.